So coming up, just a bit of information. 450 people registered for this conference, of which 200 are online. I didn't acknowledge all our people online who are present. So thank you for joining us virtually. We're coming up with a panel for our virtual audience. Please put, we're in all our panels, we're encouraging audience participation. That's fundamental part of doing these things, that this is our community, we interact with one another. So with the community who are online, put your comments in the chat, and then Ella and I will be moderating the chat and then dropping the questions into the conversation. So thank you very much. So coming up, we've got Jim's here, yeah. Jim's he's moderating a panel with DCAM 3 in motion, and our panelists are Nikki Wickman. Where's Nikki? Oh, there she is. So Nikki Wickman, Amanda Princi from Transurban, Nikki's from EBOS, Data Governance Manager EBOS, Amanda's Head of Data and AI Enablement at Transurban, and James Neilsen, who's Head of Data Governance and Capability at AustralianSuper. Please join us on the stage. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, guys, come on up. We can have a seat. We don't have to stand the whole time. So we have 40 minutes. You good? All right. All right. Go ahead, Amanda. Scott, thank you for a very thought-provoking keynote speech. I just want to kind of comment on that just for a moment. I've been in the data management space now for 30 years. And when I came into it, I was wondering to myself, who are we, what are we about, and why is it that we feel like Luddites, that we're somehow like warring against the technology, right? Which really wasn't our motivation. But with AI coming into more of the conversation and the focus on the human in the loop, it's occurred to me that that's a big part of what data management has really been all along. It's all about the human in the loop. Because the data comes from our own observations and what we record and put into these systems. They don't do it themselves. It is the human in the loop. And now bringing together AI governance and data governance the way that you've proposed, I endorse it and think that you're spot on. So thank you for that. And I hope that everybody else kind of shares that point of view. Also want to thank all the people here from records management, because I've had interactions with records management throughout my career. And it's always made sense to me to make you a part of the larger community. And so here you are, here we are. And you know, we welcome you with open arms and really glad to have you. So I just want to recognize that. Thank you for our panel. So James and Amanda and Nicole, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself. I'll just introduce myself just a little bit here, then we'll just kind of work it in order there. So my name is Jim Halcomb. What I do is I lead our research and development. As Kyle said this morning, research and development, or everything that we do at the EDMA is community-based. We're not a think tank, we're a hive mind. So everything that we do depends upon your participation. We're not coming at things from behind in a back room, coming up with wild ideas and putting them out there. Everything that we do is in collaboration with all of the practitioners and the leaders in the space. And it continues to evolve. And one of the key things that we developed out of community was the DCAM. And so I'm going to go over the DCAM. And I'm going to assume that many of you, maybe this is the first time you've even heard those letters, DCAM. So I'm going to try to give you the best primer on DCAM before we kind of lead into our discussion. But as part of my part of the organization, all of our communities of practice, all of our products, frameworks, all of our papers and research and playbooks that we develop, all that comes out of my area within the EDMA. And that also now includes the OMG. And so some of the best practices that we develop at our communities will have the opportunity to become internationally recognized standards. So with that, that's me. James, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, sir.
Thanks, Jim. So my name's James Neilsen, Head of Data Governance and Capability at AustralianSuper. AustralianSuper is Australia's largest superannuation fund. I've been there for about 2 years as part of a significant investment in data uplift. Prior to that, I spent a couple of years working with Vanguard, helping them stand up their superannuation product, again focusing on data, and then previous to that I was with UniSuper for many years. So I've been in superannuation for a long time. I'm very excited to work for an organisation that is part of the EDM Association, and DCAM is an important part of what we've been doing for the last couple of years.
Thank you. Nicole.
I'm Nicole Wickman. I am the Data Governance Manager for EBOS MedTech, which is a division of EBOS Group. I've been in the role now for just on 3 years. Actually come from an operations background, so I was the recipient of poor data and poor data management for years and decided on a career change and try and do something about it.
Excellent. Amanda.
Hello. My name's Amanda. I'm the head of data and AI enablement at Transurban. I've been there for 3.5 years, and prior to that, I was at the National Australia Bank. Let's see, what is data and AI enablement? We really focus on data and AI governance. We look at data and AI risk management. We do data architecture and modelling. We look at data literacy and AI literacy within the organisation, and we look at AI adoption as a whole. So how the organisation effectively comes up with its use cases and how we can implement it into the working lives of the organisation's teams. Prior to this, I've probably done all things data. There's probably not a thing that I haven't done, but to be fair, I started out my career as a banker. So when I think about data and I think about AI, I think about how it can really help the end user and the customer. It's really quite important to me. But yeah, anything data related, I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to be passionate about it, and I'm excited to be in a room of individuals who are just as passionate about it as me.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. Thank you all. We're going to get into some discussion after we go over the DCAM. So just so you know, this July we released the 3rd version of DCAM. That was our 10th anniversary. We had the initial model went out in 2015, this new version kind of reflects a lot of the changes that we can see coming. So with AI on the scene, with conversations emerging, and in some cases some successful implementations of data marketplace and data product, and a lot of these notions around data mesh and data fabric. If you've heard of any of these things, these have been ideas that have been bandied about and talked about quite extensively in the industry, more so as a conversation than an actual thing that's been implemented. But we've taken all of those things into consideration in order to expand and make sure that all of the things that we have in DCAM are the things that you need to have to be prepared to do those things. So, and nothing in DCAM is a wish list. So what is this thing that I'm calling DCAM? As Kyle mentioned earlier, DCAM is an acronym. It stands for Data Management Capabilities Assessment Model. Now what's important about that is that it's not a maturity model. It is a capabilities model. And there's a couple of good reasons for that, because you have to walk, then you have to crawl, then you walk, and then you run, right, with anything that you're doing. And with most organizations, I was actually the primary author of a maturity model, and 99.99999% of the time, the organizations that were using it never got around to maturity. They were still just trying to build their organization and make it fill in all the gaps. So you can think of the data management capability assessment model as all of the elements that you need in your organization in order to know that you're doing the right stuff. It doesn't mean that you're doing it super well, but it does kind of measure like how long have you been doing it? How well documented are you doing it? Do you have staff? Do you have technology? It is technology neutral. Not everything within the DCAM necessarily is focused on the people or the technology or the process. It's kind of all of the above. So you can use it for a variety of reasons, but namely the thing that you want to use it as is a measurement tool. That's what it's designed for. It's an audit tool. You can use it to start to understand the breadth of capabilities that you already have, and you can find the holes that you can put your finger in the dike. Because when it comes to data, it's not very easy to see where those holes are. And so that's one of the things that the DCAM brings to the table. As I mentioned, it was community developed. It was in 2015. It actually came on the heels of the not just the financial crisis, but a consequence of the 2008 financial crisis was a paper called the BCBS 239. So for those of you who are in the banking industry, that's what's behind the CPG 235. And in that, what they concluded was, well, they asked the question, what do we need to do as a sector to prevent 2008 from happening again? And the conclusion, we weren't surprised in the industry, but we were kind of shocked to actually see that on their own accord, authorities across the globe concluded that data governance, the lack of data governance, was the problem, and therefore is the solution. We still now, 10 years later, are struggling even to get financial institutions to where they need to be. And the DCAM was designed in part as an enabler for organizations to do just that. So everything that's in BCBS 239 is in DCAM, but DCAM is more than that. As I said, it was community-based. It was a collaborative development process. We just finished up it was about 18 months of developing version 3. What that resulted in was a cleanup of the existing version that we had, plus some new content that we added to it that we thought was particularly relevant today. Among those, data management, strategy, program design, organizational change, because a lot of data management and data governance really involves change. And so we had to add that into the mix, along with engineering, governance, collaboration. And it's all driven in order to be practical. We call this the Frisbee. Here we're calling it the disc. I don't know if you use Frisbee as a concept, so. So if you want to make your program fly, you know. So it's a complicated framework, but you can kind of break it down at a high level into 4 different kind of phases or pillars, starting with the foundational components. The foundational components are where you actually define your data strategy, your data management strategy, your vision. What is it that you're actually intending to establish in the organization to direct it and drive it? I like to say with data strategy, it's the what, the why, and the ROI. From those foundational components, then we get into the execution components. And then from execution, then we get into the parts where collaboration comes into play with data governance and building our teams. And then lastly, the analytics component. Now, what we're already starting to see with the analytics is that it still exists as an optional part of the framework. But what we're seeing more and more is that analytics cuts all the way through. That there's scarcely any organizations that aren't taking analytics seriously. And now with the advent of AI in some of our other communities of practice, we've defined AI as essentially automated analytics. It's a part of the analytics stack. We kept it optional because we really need organizations to kind of see themselves and what they're doing. We're not trying to be cutting edge. We're trying to be supportive in where most organizations are. The DCAM is for everybody. It's not just for the top banks in the world or the organizations that have already figured it out. But even they need it as well as people who are just getting started on their journey. So going a level down, so we have 8 components that lie underneath those 4 different areas. So the first component, as I mentioned before, is really where it is absolutely essential. If you don't already have one, it's more important to have a data strategy than a data management strategy. And the reason why is because data spills over into everything that an organization does. It's hard to make a crisp statement to management about just saying we're managing our data. Well, what data and why? What are you expecting to get out of it? So it's important to actually think critically about the domains. What is the scope of data that is most meaningful that you're going to bring under formal management? And that's your data strategy. Then the DCAM, once you do the assessment, then gives you the capabilities and the gaps that you have in your organization that you can then begin to build your roadmap and to build your data management strategy. Then we have component 2. Component 2, that's more getting into the organizational structure. It's how once you've created, if you think about the strategy, the data strategy and the data management strategy are the requirements. It's your business, it's the beginning of your business case that you're gonna make in order to get the funding that you need, because you're gonna need people, you're gonna need technology in order to do the job that you're doing. And then component 3, now we get into architecture. So in the past, we had business architecture and technology architecture as separate, and data architecture was kind of flowing in between. We just lumped them all together. Architecture is architecture. It kind of simplified things a bit. We had a little bit of redundancy. We were able to get rid of that. But architecture is absolutely fundamental. In my view, most data quality issues, half of them are caused by design problems. The other half is usually a business process problem, just roughly speaking. So architecture is tremendously valuable in anticipating what the structure of the data should look like in order to best support the business. And business architecture, if you have it, business architecture will help to define the processes that will define the data requirements that cut across the organization. So business architecture is tremendously important and not nearly as in place as I would like to see. Component 4, this is a new area that we added, and that's because of the advent of analytics. Even though architecture does the best job that they can to define and structure the data that are in your systems, there's still a need to know more about how those things fit together, because it's almost impossible to stay on top of the task of how all these things come together from a business context, especially with analytics. So having data knowledge about your data assets, using data catalogs, using ontologies, knowledge graph, having a semantic layer in your organization is not just the job of architecture, that's the job of the business. And the business owns that, owns the meaning of what is driving your business. Component 5, that's more about delivery, that's data quality. Of course, it's the whole reason why we have a DCAM in the first place. I've variously, even now, I have people come to me saying, Jim, we need a data quality framework. And I laugh because that's exactly what the DCAM is, because what people don't understand unless they've tried it is you can't engineer your way to data quality. As I mentioned before, a lot about data is the human in the loop. And that's why governance is one of the critical components for driving data quality, because it's in the eye of the owner as well as the user, and those things have to be mitigated through a governance structure. So data quality is just as much about tooling as it is about your strategy, as it is about your governance. Component 6, getting into governance. I think we've kind of, well, we're going to beat that one to death today probably. But essentially we do define in the DCAM a difference between data management and data governance. The data governance is really kind of part of the overall data management, and governance is where you're building that community for collective decision making to manage your data as a corporate asset. That's primarily the way we view data governance, and it's absolutely essential to being able to ensure quality in your data. And then we have component 7. So component 7, back in the day, was more a direct response to BCBS 239, which is all about risk data aggregation and reporting. We've kept that component in there, but really what's essential now is that we've brought into that the whole life cycle approach. And for those of you from records management, I think that's a real obvious tie-in between our disciplines is life cycle management, and it's tremendously important to managing your risk. In addition to that, we define what we call a data control environment, and it's getting to controlling your data assets in general. And then lastly, component 8. Component 8 is the analytics part, and as I mentioned before, there's probably a tie-in that's going to flow through the entire model. Okay, so I hope you all feel well informed about DCAM now, because we do need to move on to our questions. And at the end of the day, it is about having trusted data. So I'm going to skip past this here so that we can get into our discussion, but just know that the DCAM now is starting to be legislated. We have the Federal Reserve in the US that not only uses it, but the Office of the Inspector General actually audits them against the DCAM, so it's become official. Okay, thank you for that. I hope that you benefited from having a little bit of a primer on the DCAM. Now, to move on, let's talk about your assessment. Nicole, if you don't mind. You've had some experience. It wasn't with version 3, and I don't think anybody's done an assessment on version 3. It's only been out a couple of months, right? But if you don't mind sharing with us, like, what was it? Was it easy to sell management on doing the assessment? Like, and how did you go about it, and what did you get out of it, if you don't mind?
Sure. I think Kyle kind of stole my talk track earlier this morning. It was very much about establishing a benchmark. So that was the challenge that I went to our enterprise group with, that, you know, we were doing things, we kind of were going by gut feeling and experience, but we needed a framework to help us establish that benchmark so that then we could prove value to the business. Was very easy. The enterprise team introduced me to DCAM, spoke to Andrew and Ella and walked through that. I actually sat the certified training myself to get a better understanding of it, and then we implemented it in the business. We're at the start of our data journey and of a low data maturity across the group. However, this really helped us with the dialogue. We introduced it. We've started some literacy around data and what it means and how it can be used within the business. And so, yeah, it really, I think the thing that I got out of it was that I required that formal benchmark, and we have a framework to work to and assess regularly. But what I probably overlooked was the fact that it really opened up the dialogue across the enterprise. And you know, you were making... Whilst your assumptions were fairly on the money, you now have the opportunity to speak to your business users and your consumers and really understand what their challenges are and work towards improving that.
Did you have a partner executing the assessment, or was that a self-assessment?
No, we actually did it in-house. So I did have help, as I said, from our data group at the enterprise level. But yeah, no, a lot of it was around everyone learning at the same time. I was sharing what I was learning and taking the company on that journey. If I were to do it again, yeah, I would probably get some further involvement from that. I've since learnt of some other different approaches in that. And yeah, I'd probably take that up.
Now, you know, we didn't rehearse this. I'm asking this question for the first time here. I often say that if an organization is really thinking seriously about DCAM, I advise them to do an assessment even before really getting serious about training. And my argument for that is that I think that every person, I might just be projecting from my own experience, but I feel like every person in any training class is asking themselves the question, how does this apply to me? And you're imagining your own environment with your own challenges and doing the translation, you know, trying to take what you're getting from the class and figure that out for yourself. But when you're doing an assessment, that's exactly what you're doing. You're working through that process of taking these concepts and connecting them specifically to the things that you do and how you're doing them. And as a consequence, I think you get up to speed much faster on the value of what the framework is providing. And then the training after the fact can kind of like pull the whole thing together, you know. And I don't know if how that resonates with you, if you would do it differently than you did before, or what you would have to say about that. But I'm curious how.
No, I think you're definitely right. Having had the experience, you will be able to, and then do the training afterwards, you'll be able to really sort of live through your lessons learnt and apply that adoption. But yeah, it definitely, you know, either way, combining both gives you a greater understanding and an ability to be able to implement.
Well, I want to congratulate your chutzpah to actually take that on, right? You know, that's a big effort, right? And even though we endeavor to make the framework pretty self-explanatory, it's not entirely. You know, it's a learning process.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Could I just add in here? So I think when I think about education and people and training, and then I look at like DCAM and the journey we've had with it. Like at Transurban, we started with nothing 3.5 years ago. And we thought about it in two ways. There's the physical capability of what data management actually is. There's the technicality of it, right? And the organisation needs to be able to know where it's at in order to know where you got to be. And that's what we hung our strategy off. And DCAM really helped us with that. But what it didn't answer at the time was what was our people's thought processes around and their attitudes and their behaviours around data. And so what we looked at was this concept of data literacy and AI literacy now, but data literacy back then as a way of understanding people's behaviours, not just a tool. You know, people say, oh, data literacy is like Tableau or whatever. But it's not, right? It's actually an attitude and behaviour. When you pair the DCAM framework with this thought process of data literacy, you're actually going to get a very balanced approach to your strategy, and you're going to be able to implement into your organisation not just the capability, but the data culture that you're after.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, for me, what
It
you're
does.
talking about.
It becomes a language that you can all adopt and talk about what's going on. And so, yeah, James, with that, I think you were going to share with us how you've leveraged DCAM for building a program, if you don't mind sharing with us your process.
Yeah, sure. So our data journey as an organisation, this is before the time that I started there, started with a DCAM assessment, and I can't remember the exact number. I think we came out as a 2 or something like that, and probably optimistic at that. And that's one of the downsides, I think, of performing your own assessment, is that different areas of the business think they're great, so they score themselves up, and other areas score themselves down. So that is actually part of the learnings from a data team, is to understand how the business thinks about these capabilities. Anyway, so wind the clock forward, the organisation decided they needed to be much better at managing data, so therefore get much more capability in-house. So they instigated a data program to invest and bring about the centralisation of a lot of data capability. And part of that was really to then use DCAM as a measuring stick, so to set targets, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year in advance, so that we could keep up with where the business needed data to be to enable the data strategies, the business strategies. So we don't do an assessment every year. We actually have a budget to do it, and the next one we do will be an externally supported maturity assessment, because we want someone independent to come in that can really have a clear measure stick of where we're at. I think the hope after that point is that we will build the capability internally to do it ourselves. But the other thing I'd say about setting targets through DCAM is that you don't have to uplift every single segment to have a win out of enabling maturity. You really need to invest in those segments of the DCAM disc which are going to drive the best business value first, and also set the foundations for you to expand on that in the future. So, I'd like to think we're at a 4 these days. Are we investing in every single segment? Certainly not, but we're investing in the ones that we care about.
That makes sense. I mean, all of it applies, but, you can't lift the tide just spreading your investment too thinly, right? And there's so much of a part of it that's culture, as was mentioned before, and how important culture is. It's a people process, and it's a change process in that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And that cultural piece is one of the reasons why we decided to put all of our data team through DCAM training. Yep. Because what we found is that it really set a strong base of understanding. So a lot of people end up in data, certainly in Australia, through circuitous routes. They come from different areas of the business and they land in data because there's, they get annoyed no one's fixing the problem, so they come into it. And so they don't see the breadth of what it takes to run a data organisation. Mm-hmm. And in going through the training, they actually understand how their piece of the world fits into that bigger piece.
Yes. And
they also start to realise that where things aren't working quite the way or as good as they could, there's a reason for that. It's because another piece of the pie hasn't been lifted to the same level of maturity. Right. So they start asking really interesting questions of leadership around saying, well, where's the business case? Can you show me the business case that we're driving towards?
Right.
So, and that drives really good conversation. And
and
we even go to the extent of inviting others across the organisation that are sort of data centric into the training as well.
That's great. Amanda, were you wanting to make another comment? You looked like you were. No. Okay. We're going to have to start thinking about wrapping up, but I do have questions. So a question from the chat. Asking if we're looking to extend DCAM to include the records management component to encompass data and information. This better feeds an AI-led program. I think absolutely. Obviously with the show of interest from the records management community, and certainly from my own experience, I've always seen a couple of tie-ins, and I'm sure there's more. Before coming in here, I had a conversation just over coffee with one of the folks from RIMPA, and I learned so much in that 5 minutes. Right, Scott? I was out of date or wrong more than I was right. I'm not used to that. You know, in data management, I'm you know, I feel pretty confident. I know what I'm talking about, but I was out of my element. You know, and there's obviously clear a connection with now that AI is turning unstructured data and bringing that into the data supply chain. So absolutely, we will do that. Are there any other questions in the audience that anybody wants to ask before we start to wrap this panel up? Yes, sir.
Just as an observation, there are already a number of maturity models out there, or capability models, in the unstructured world as well. Just my advice would be, by all means, try and blend them, but don't start from scratch.
We're always open to, as I said, we're community driven. So if the community doesn't bring everything, then that's obviously going to be a blind spot. So we do depend upon you if you're to get involved. If you want to see, if you have a vision for what the good looks like, participate, and we're open to including any and all things that we think are relevant. And it's an education process, because I don't know the records management area, but I know the data management area, and I think there's a misunderstanding about what constitutes a measurement tool, and what a maturity model is, what a capability model is. And Kyle and I go back for the past 15 plus years, and we went deep down the rabbit hole of maturity models with the mother of all maturity models, CMMI. We worked there. I got a download for a whole month from 9 to 5 every day from Mike Conrad on what a maturity model is and their whole history. So it's a thing unto itself, but there'll be lots of learning for sure on all sides. Any other questions before we wrap up? Any final comments from our panelists as well? If you want to throw a word in at the end of advice or anything, you're welcome to do that as well.
I'll just add that I think it's great that DCAM V3 includes the change management components and data literacy components. That makes it really real for our people and makes it really real for the business, and thinking about what they actually need from data and what they actually need from AI. And I'd encourage anyone to think about those components when you're thinking about implementing a framework like DCAM or any framework for that matter.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thanks, James. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you. Good job. All right.